You only need to know me. I will be the one.
Out of all the outlandish devil fruit abilities out there, what if I were to tell you that Luffy, Trafalgar Law, and just maybe even Eustace Kid have eaten ultimate devil fruits, and a spotlight was placed on their unique powers ever since Sabaody? That their devil fruit powers have some relevance maybe to events and figures of the Void Century? And considering the awakening of a legendary devil fruit that is not awakened for centuries, Law and Kid coincidentally have also awakened their devil fruits, even though this might not be what the Gorosei were referring to. The reader seeing this for the first time on Onigashima still, and there's growing belief Luffy will awaken his own devil fruit soon unless he already has. Altogether, the awakening of their powers, the true ability of Luffy's Gomu Gomu no Mi, Law's Ope Ope no Mi, and as revealed in SBS, Kid's Jiki Jiki no Mi, have the power to save the world, change the world, and destroy the world, depending on whose hands they fall into. It just so happens that these 3 Paramecia type of devil fruits fell into the hands of the monster or captain trio of the worst generation. And before we dive into this theory, make sure to take your hand, reach over, hit the like button, and subscribe to claim your own devil fruit power today, as for when it will arrive, well, someone has to die first. Anyways, I wanted to begin with an idea that just maybe these devil fruits each belong to an important figure in the past. Along with that, each devil fruit might have a unique ability that is connected to their bounty. The bounty of the devil fruit, that is. I'm sure you've heard myself and others mention this before, but the Ope Ope no Mi was sought after by the Marines and the world government, who were willing to pay as much as 5 billion berries to buy it. This number, 5 billion, mirrors the bounty placed on Luffy's Gomu Gomu no Mi as revealed to us in Romance Dawn version 2. Where Luffy's grandfather estimated the Gomu Gomu no Mi to be worth 5 billion berries. A strange connection that cannot be overlooked, right? And so, considering Eustace Kid, shouldn't his devil fruit mirror theirs to keep the parallel going? The monster trio of the worst generation, as I said. Do you guys think Kid's devil fruit is also worth 5 billion berries because, truth be told, it's possible devil fruit prices do vary just like the bounties on pirates and other wanted criminals vary. However, some people like emperors and first commanders are more wanted than others, and I wouldn't be surprised if the same holds true for devil fruits. But what matters is the reasoning. The best glimpse into the reasoning comes from Law himself, whose devil fruit bounty is canon and was revealed in the actual storyline, a backstory or flashback. And also the words of Doflamingo, who described Law's power as being able to fulfill mankind's oldest dream, thus earning the title of the ultimate devil fruit for a reason. And so, what if there are other ultimate devil fruit abilities out there? Specifically, ultimate devil fruit abilities amongst the monster trio of the worst generation that can fulfill different dreams. Let's break down each devil fruit and go from there. In terms of changing the world, the Ope Ope no Mi has the power to literally transform the world in a surgical fashion, even permanently so, given what it can do to objects and people, changing souls or personalities, switching people's bodies, attaching different body parts to others to create artificial centaurs or hybrids of animal and man, to create brand new species, you could say. It is no wonder that the person that eats the Ope Ope no Mi is known as a free modification human. Now, we learn that the Ope Ope no Mi once belonged to a doctor, who became a legend after eating it. The Ope Ope no Mi allowed him to perform miraculous operations that cured all kinds of diseases. The Ope Ope no Mi is both legendary and coveted for allowing the user to perform otherworldly surgeries, cure untreatable diseases, and even circumvent physical disabilities. Doflamingo told us that the power of the Ope Ope no Mi is so valuable not only because of the personality switching surgery, which might have some importance down the road, but also because of its greatest ability, that can only be unlocked in the hands of a skilled enough user. The ability to grant mankind's longest and oldest dream, eternal life. For this very reason, many call the Ope Ope no Mi the ultimate devil fruit because of its power to bestow immortality at the cost of the user's own life. Looking at Law's abilities in the present moment, it's difficult to say whether his awakening is required to use this power, the power of the immortality operation, but it's possible. What Law's awakening seems to do is give his devil fruit power to objects, maybe even others. We see Law use anesthesia and coat his sword with his room or kroom ability, His sword then becomes a room in and of itself, and so whereas Law would have to worry about people escaping his room, or needing to make contact with them while within his room for his powers to work, or maybe even his powers having no effect because, as he said himself, some abilities don't work if their haki or will is too strong. When Law stabs you with his awakening combined with his sword, you are permanently stuck within his room, or rather his room is placed within you. From there, Law can use all his abilities on you, although we've only seen a few up until now. One thing I've been meaning to mention is how the Ope Ope no Mi can manipulate the orientation, movements, and physical configuration of anything and anyone, themselves included. I wonder just how far Oda can go with this, how broken Law's powers actually are. We have seen Law, with his awakening, reconfigure the size of his sword as if it were Goku's power pole, as if it had eaten the Gomu Gomu no Mi and become rubber. In a way, Law is kind of reconfiguring the metal, or reconfiguring the metal of his sword at an atomic level. That is what's causing it to stretch. Law's sword becoming his room, therein stretching like his room is able to do in size, maybe with the same risk attached to his lifespan. But what else can Law manipulate or stretch with his abilities if he can use his room on them? In terms of Law using his powers on himself, we have rarely seen this. I don't recall Law changing his soul with the body of someone else, swapping his personality for another's. Maybe he'll do this at some point. Law has even shown that he's able to operate on himself, removing the bullets that Doflamingo has shot into his body. Now, there was one moment in which, during Punk Hazard, Law had removed his own heart. But again, he's never switched himself into another person's body, up until this point in the story. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Surgeon of Death has some crazy operations he could perform on himself in the future. I like to think of Hunter x Hunter and how Neferpitou had a Nen ability called Dr. Blith, where Neferpitou successfully performed a surgery just by imagining how to bring her opponent back to life in order to fight with him again. Hopefully that doesn't spoil anyone. But Neferpitou relied on puppeteering more so than actual medicine. This ability was able to not only manipulate the bodies of others, but also Neferpitou's own body, enhancing physical attributes and reaction speed. I wouldn't be surprised if Law could perform operations on his own body to do the same, given Law is a character who learned many lessons from Doflamingo, a string puppeteer like Neferpitou. In his youth, Law learned marksmanship from Gladius, martial arts from Lao Ji, and swordsmanship from Diamante. All this has impacted his fighting style, and as many question when did Law actually learn Awakening, since it is implied he did so prior to using it against Big Mom and Onigashima. I like to think that Law learned it from Doflamingo, Awakening that is, just as he had learned everything else from the Don Quixote pirates. That during Dressrosa and Doflamingo's fight with Luffy, Law had observed Doflamingo using Awakening, and this inspired him to improve thereafter. Doflamingo also uses puppetry on his own body to fly, as we have seen in the past, as well as in combat to attack. Maybe Law will unlock a self-surgery combat mode down the road, manipulating his own body as he fights. Maybe this is another reason why the Ope Ope no Mi is so powerful. Now, in terms of switching souls or personalities, expect Oda to reveal this has been done before, perhaps permanently on a major character in the future, maybe even from the distant past. In terms of the immortality surgery, the only way they can possibly know of this fruit's devil fruit power and the risk of doing so is if it had been done before. And so similarly, expect a reveal down the road as to who this operation was used on in the past, because that character is either very important or alive today. But there's also the idea that Law will one day give his life up, sacrifice himself. Law tells us he's aware of the ultimate ability of his devil fruit power, one that might require his devil fruit to awaken to that level. But he has no interest in using it, at least for now. Personally, it's hard to imagine a future in which Luffy, Law, Kid, and Blackbeard all reach Laugh Tale at the same time. The final island for me seems reserved for only 2 people. So something has to happen to Law and Kid, which is what continues to make the future of One Piece so interesting, especially if one of them dies. Law also having the will of D, and D's being prone to dying with a smile. And I've always said this, that I think most of the D's in the story we have to see, or we have to verify whether or not they are a D, based on their death, or some other attribute. Now, just as Law's devil fruit was once owned by a legendary doctor, I'm sure you're aware of the theories that Luffy's devil fruit once belonged to the sun god Nika or Joy Boy. We might get this reveal in the near future too. Why the world government was after it may be an ulterior motive for Shanks' crew stealing it, and why it has a bounty equivalent to Law's. Now, the Gomu Gomu no Mi has many possible powers that might cause it to be feared by the world government if awakened. One of the more outlandish ones is assuming a fictional application of rubber erasers which is properly written into the story. I would love to see this because it'd be absolutely broken otherwise. Then there is the power of gigantification, that maybe whoever had this fruit in the past could turn into a giant. Going back to chapters 504 and 505, the first time we saw Luffy, Law, and Kid fight by side on Sabaody. Their devil fruit powers are put under a microscope. We see Luffy inflate himself into a rubber balloon, Kid's magnetism, and Law's Ope Ope no Mi at work. After this, Oda uses one of the Marines to emphasize their strange devil fruit abilities. But what is key to the gigantification theory, whether Luffy ever does it himself or not, overlooking the non-canon anime filler of Luffy becoming a giant with the outside help of another's power. In chapter 505, we see Luffy inflate his arm and claim he has the arm of the giants, just as he had told Rob Lucci in chapter 421, the arm of a giant. Clearly giants have served as a source of inspiration for Luffy's abilities in Gear 3rd, just like animals do for his transformations in Gear 4th. And I've always wondered why Luffy never inflated his entire body at the same time. Shouldn't he be able to do that? Now Kid, not to be outdone, makes a giant arm too, but that's not the point, I guess. That's just pitting Luffy and Kid directly against one another as usual. But I like to think there's more to his powers as well, and we'll touch on that shortly. But I do like how, while displaying their powers side by side, Luffy comments on the strange abilities of Law and Kid. Despite Luffy having seen many strange devil fruit abilities over the course of the story, with Kid then telling Luffy that his Gomu Gomu no Mi power was the strangest. And he might be right about that given all that Luffy can and could possibly do. Some even think Luffy's Devil Fruit Awakening can counter Blackbeard's Guru Guru no Mi, as you've heard me say in the past, rubber absorbing the vibrations of earthquakes, the Guru Guru no Mi having the power to destroy the world. And so Luffy then, via the Gomu Gomu no Mi, could save the world from being destroyed. And so his Devil Fruit power is kind of symbolic as well as very useful, necessary. Now Eustass Kid, who could possibly have had Kid's Devil Fruit in the past, maybe a legendary figure as well, maybe an extraordinary engineer. The Jiki Jiki no Mi allows the user to both create and control magnetic forces along with things affected by magnetism such as metal, as we saw from Eustass Kid's assigning magnetic forces to Big Mom, which she struggled to resist. Kid's magnetism in general, can be extremely strong and very difficult if not impossible to resist. Kid doing this to Big Mom with his awakening, which allows him to magnetize and control other objects outside of metal, including living organisms and the surrounding environment. This can have devastating results and is one of the reasons some people are holding out a slim measure of hope that Eustass Kid will display in the future a fraction of Magneto's power from the X-Men series. He doesn't have to be EOS Magneto, or assume Magneto's ultimate abilities. Instead, one of the earlier displays of Magneto's abilities would be more than enough. Even in my opinion, putting Kid in the category of Whitebeard, who had a power that could destroy the world as we mentioned earlier. Magnetism, vibrations, etc., all being incredibly powerful. There's also the theory that was brought up by Joy Boy Theories and I think others that Kid's power was once used to affect the magnetic fields of the islands across the Grand Line. What if Kid's fruit is also important to the world government because it is the reason the final island of Laugh Tale cannot be found? Or maybe it can be used to reach Laugh Tale without the road poneglyphs if one were close enough to the final island. Then again, we come away with the impression that Kid went to Whole Cake Island to retrieve a road poneglyph, so if that's true, it would seem like he needs the road poneglyphs like everybody else. It's interesting how Oda then uses Law to literally and figuratively silence Big Mom, his new technique called R-Room Silent, which is inspired by Corazon's Nagi Nagi no Mi power, a Paramecia class devil fruit that allows the user to create a soundproof field to cancel all noises, making the user a soundless human. In a way, Law's ability to copy Corazon's powers reminds me of Luffy and his Red Hawk attack. It still remains to be seen what Red Hawk exactly is. We have some ideas when it comes to friction or whether or not it's actually a product of his Devil Fruit itself. Maybe Luffy using his Devil Fruit using friction combined with his rubber to create flames, and so Luffy using his Devil Fruit just like Law to mimic someone important to him. But anyways, Corazon happens to mean heart in Spanish, and Law's Devil Fruit is shaped like a heart. And in a way, it's as if Law has inherited the heart of Corazon, just like Luffy has inherited the flame of Ace. R-Room being a power that is similar to Corazon's by eating the heart-shaped Ope Ope no Mi, even though the abilities of the Ope Ope no Mi are on a whole other level. There appears to be for awakenings then, different stages or levels. Or we might see one power of awakening here and now in Wano. The awakenings of Law and Kid and maybe Luffy have the potential to further grow and expand, and ironically, I was working on a video about this that is dropping Sunday or Monday, so subscribe to stay notified when that video drops. But in terms of new awakening abilities and future power-ups, for those with awakenings, awakening being an expansion of your Devil Fruit power, Law shows that just maybe he can tap into various awakened abilities for the Ope Ope no Mi based on the alphabetic naming of his powers. We saw K-Room, in which he infused his sword with his Devil Fruit power, making his sword a room in and of itself, or altering its composition, causing it to stretch. And now we see R-Room, the English alphabet consisting of 26 letters, I think, and so Law might have 24 other awakened, or if not an awakening, unique or new alphabetic abilities, which reminds me of all those cooking recipes we haven't yet seen from Sanji. But if there are other levels to awakening or new abilities to be revealed down the road, beyond looking at every character that has awakened in the story like Katakuri and Doflamingo, let's continue with the leading faces of the supernova. Luffy might have a giant form. If shown to be linked to awakening, he might have an expanded Red Hawk ability where he can use even more fire, maybe even coat his entire body in flames. He might also be able to use his elasticity with even more freedom, and I'll be making a video on that specifically in the near future. With Kid, Eustace Kid, he might summon a giant Gundam or Optimus Prime type of creation, since he can magnetize anything he might come to, not just magnetize, but manipulate and control the bodies of his opponents, and the entire world around him. Everything that can be magnetized, that is. Similar to how Fujitora used his gravity on all that rubble at the end of Dressrosa. Maybe Kid can even tap into a few of these Magneto abilities, which are said to be nearly limitless, manipulating all forms of magnetism, summoning force fields, and shooting electromagnetic pulses that can disable anything that is electronic, such as Franky's devices and other things. If you can think of any other awakened abilities for these characters that might be revealed in the future, let me know in the comments below. But in order to fully master their fruits and awaken their ultimate abilities, however, the right person needs to find the fruit, or be chosen to eat it. Because Law's powers are said to be best utilized in the hands of someone with a high degree of medical knowledge, this being required to use the Ope Ope no Mi to its fullest extent. It is no surprise that it was perfect for Law, who as an exceptionally skilled surgeon and knowledgeable doctor can use this ability to its full potential. Law also being the son of a man he once claimed to be the best doctor in Fleavance, his father being responsible for educating him in medical science. But also because of this, it's worth asking what conditions can be gleaned in terms of Luffy and Kid maximizing the full potential of their Devil Fruit abilities. Is it possible they were also perfect candidates for those unconventional powers? Eustace Kid seems to be an engineer or some kind of inventor, and this might explain why he's able to effectively and creatively use the power of magnetism to his advantage, drawing out its true power to redesign the world, to reconstruct it with magnetism. Not much is known about Kid, but since Law is both a doctor and the captain of his ship, maybe Kid is not just a captain. Maybe he has another role on the crew. Luffy has two roles. He's the captain and the main protagonist. Maybe we can even glean some more information from the Straw Hat composition, the Straw Hat crew that is, about Kid from Franky, just like we can lump Law in with Chopper, both being doctors. Franky is a master craftsman, being a first-rate shipwright, and an exceptional carpenter as well as inventor or engineer. Just about everything he can do maybe Kid can do in his own unique way. Except just as Chopper should be a better doctor than Law by the end of the story, the best doctor that can cure anything without relying on a Devil Fruit, Franky will be the best inventor or shipwright maybe. A better engineer than Eustace Kid without relying on Kid's Devil Fruit powers. Although will Franky surpass Vegapunk, not sure, that remains to be seen. But in the most recent chapter, Kid creates a large electromagnetic cannon, and we know from past examples Kid can create other things, like the box he made on the rooftop to trap Zeus. From giant bulls to Gundam-like structures, there is no limit to the various mechanical creations he's made. Maybe Kid can even summon full-sized Gundams to mirror whatever giant form Luffy might be capable of. Punk Rodden looking like Gear 4 Luffy. Gear 5 Luffy and any other abilities might then find some resemblance in Kid, given their comparisons. As for why Luffy is perfect for his Devil Fruit, it's important to acknowledge the possibility that there's nothing special about Luffy's Devil Fruit at all. Oda explained in SBS that he gave Luffy rubber Devil Fruit powers at first because the conceptualization of stretching abilities was specifically to allow for a silly fighting style that could make battles amusing as well as dramatic. If Luffy's fruit isn't that special, or maybe it's so basic, it requires a specific individual with a unique vision and sense of combat to bring out its true potential. And in this way, Luffy was destined for it, I guess. With Luffy's childlike personality and imagination, it's easy for him to stretch and mold Rubber into whatever he can think of. He doesn't need to be a smart doctor or engineer. Rubber also reflecting his guts, not giving up or in easily. A strong will, which curiously Luffy uses to further his Rubber abilities, especially with Gear 4. Willpower being Haki, and more so than Law and even Kid, who is also a conqueror. It is clear Luffy has the strongest Haki, the strongest will or spirit. This imagination, though, tying into Luffy being the most representative of one who pursues their dreams at any cost. Luffy's dream being so wild and imaginative, only those then, with exceptional belief, can unlock the Gomu Gomu no Mi's true power. Overall, these Devil Fruits match the nature of their owners, Luffy, Law, and Kid, the strongest of this new generation, and only these individuals maybe, with the exception of a few others, could master these powers and eventually awaken their Devil Fruit's true potential, an ultimate power that the world fears. But as usual, we will have to wait and see. Don't forget to like the video, comment with your thoughts below, share this with your friends, and subscribe. As always, there's more to come. Until next time.